We are going to move to Westminster now to speak to the Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry, who has accused the government of inaction on fraud, with 3/4 of scams targeting people here in Britain committed by international gangs. Emily Thornberry, welcome to the programme. Thank you so much for talking to us. Tell us a bit about this research that the Labour Party has done.
So, over 40% of crime in this country is fraud these days. It's the easiest fraud, it's the easiest crimes to commit, and there's hardly any detection of it. Hardly anyone is ever prosecuted. But 3/4 of it is committed from abroad, and there is a type of fraud particularly which is called advance fee, well, never mind what it's called, but the point is this, is that they ask for a sum of money in order for you to get services or goods or whatever. So it might be, give us £2.50 and we will deliver a parcel for you, hand over your bank details and it'll be there tomorrow, pretending to be Royal Mail. Or it might be, yes, I love you so much, I want to come over and see you, can you help me with the fares, that sort of thing. So that is now 1 in 20 of all crimes, which is extraordinary. Now, there's a number of things that can be done about it, but there are technical things. So quite often these you'll get mass text messages going out to tens of thousands of people, and only a tiny proportion of people will respond, but that's enough for them to get the money to make it worthwhile. So you'll get sort of factories of these things just happening. You'll get mass telephone calling in order to try and pick up people in order to defraud them, and it's happened to nearly all of us. It's a very serious matter. And you can have technical ends to it so that you can stop these numbers, you can close down these buildings. It is easy to find out where this fraud is coming, where it is coming from geographically. There is an infrastructure in places like India where large amount of fraud is coming from at the moment. And we're in the middle of trade negotiations with the Indians. I think we're on the 12th round of trade negotiations. I've been telling them for months, this government, why don't you discuss fraud with them? Why don't you ask if law enforcement authorities both in the UK and India can't work together to try to close down some of these factories, because it will save an awful lot of us a lot of money. And they haven't mentioned fraud once in these negotiations. Well, it's ridiculous.
Emily, I can tell you where the fraud's coming from. Nigeria, China, India, Pakistan, Brazil. Those are the 5 biggest international fraud capitals of the world. Do you really think that you're going to be able to...
Russia.
Well, I said the top 5, I didn't say the top 7. Do you really think that you're going to be able to stop some guys in a warehouse in the middle of Brazil because you're going to do a trade deal with them?
What you need to do when you're tackling international crime is not shrug your shoulders and say, oh, it's a bit hard, let's not bother. No, we've got to bother, because the amount of fraud that we are subjected to as a country, if you total up all of it, is the equivalent of the amount of money that we spend on the National Health Service plus another quarter. And what you have to do is you have to work with other law enforcement agencies across the world. That's how it works. And actually, when you are in the middle of negotiations with the Indian government, for example, you can say to them, do you know what, since we're talking, let's also talk about fraud. Let's see what we can do together to close down these fraud factories. That's my point. We need to be able to work together as a world in order to be able to contain fraud, because otherwise we are going to be swept away by it. It is 1 in 20 of fraud, an eighth of all crime in this country at the moment is this particular type of fraud. So, so we need to take this seriously, and we can't just go, well, it's just too hard, because it needs to be dealt with.
Emily Thornberry, there's a big story in today's newspapers. I'm sure you'll be thrilled with the coverage, saying that Labour Party is planning to expand childcare, preschool childcare, as part of your manifesto. Stories in yesterday's papers saying that Keir Starmer had told his team, yourself included, that the manifesto must be finished by February, and yet no sign of how you're going to pay for these various policies that you're flagging up at the moment.
Well, there's signs of where we're going to pay for a lot of our policies. But you're right, Daisy, what we will need to do is, when we publish our manifesto, we will need to be clear that none of our promises in that manifesto will be anything other than costed. And you will get a very different thing from the Conservatives, as you know. So we've heard over Christmas, all these different suggestions from the government about what it is that they're going to put into their budget, but no suggestion as to how any of that is going to be paid for. But one of the things we have learned from the date of the budget is confirmation of the worst kept secret in Westminster, which is that we're likely to be heading for an election in May. And so, yes, we need to make sure that we're ready for an election in May. And we need to make sure our policies are ready by then. And one of the things that we've done is that we've asked a really distinguished educationalist called Sir David Bell to do a review for us and to put together not just some promises, but an actual strategy as to how it is that we are going to get childcare back on its feet again after 13 years of austerity and the government cutting back on the way that they have, and to make sure that we are able to help children and their parents with childcare at an early age, because frankly, the system at the moment is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. You know that, I know that, everyone does, but yet nothing is done about it. Honestly, it's about time that we got ourselves a government that's prepared to govern and to make some hard decisions and move on.
Emily, but the current government has similar plans to you for childcare. They want to increase the tax from age 9 months upwards for kids to have free nursery places. With your manifesto, when it does come out, if it does come out, can you guarantee to our viewers that it's going to actually show a difference, a big difference between Labour and the Tories, or is it going to be Tory light, so to speak?
I'll tell you what the difference is going to be. Right? They keep announcing that they're going to do things, but they never have a strategy as to how they're going to do it. So what they do is they say, oh, we're going to do this, and nothing happens, Nothing happens. And so what they don't have is they don't have the backfill on how does this policy work and how is it going to be put together. And that is why we are doing this work in opposition, so that when we have a manifesto promise, we will have behind it a proper strategy as to how we will deliver it and how it will be paid for. That will be the difference. A government that actually wants to govern and a government that's given up.
And Emily, the Conservative Party, obviously, we were expecting the government in the last mini-budget to announce some changes to inheritance tax. They didn't do so, but now it's being flagged in today's Daily Mail that perhaps in the budget on March the 6th, they might halve, instead of scrapping inheritance, halve inheritance tax. If they do that, would you reverse that?
This is the game that they play. So over the summer, over the Christmas holidays, they've been sitting back going, well, how do we keep our backbenchers happy? How do we throw them some red meat? How do we stop them rebelling? Let's see what we can think of. In the Telegraph, they say, oh, they're going to get rid of the higher rate of tax. Oh, they're going to make it, they're going to change the lower rate of tax. Oh, they're going to get rid of inheritance tax. To which the Daily Telegraph says, hooray, let's do it all. To which we say, how are you going to pay for any of this? And yet what they spin and what they brief is, oh, we're setting up all these traps for Labour. Why don't they just make some decisions along the lines of what is best for our country, instead of putting party first and country second? They are not governing properly. They are not costing any of their promises, and they spend their time trying to trap Labour. It's like some sort of scorched earth policy. They don't really care about what it is that happens to the country over the next few months. Let's hope that we get a general election in May, and let's hope that the public get an opportunity to chuck this lot out.
Well, Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry, thank you very much.